I guess one of the concerns about rental properties for many landlords is that as the price of the properties goes up, as the costs go up, how do I increase the rents? Well, a couple of things. Depending on when you bought your property and when you rented it first. If it's an older property and you've been renting it, then you're subject to the guidelines. What's very important is that every year prior to the anniversary, you give a 90 days notice for rent increase. Why? It's, sometimes it's 1.5%, it's 1.98%. It doesn't seem like much, but it adds up. So then that's the accumulative. The other way we can increase the rents is take a look at what services does the tenant need. So for instance, understanding how your rent is set up at the initial stage. If I'm going to be renting my unit and utilities are included, which my practice is never to include the utilities and have the tenants pay for themselves, but if you are in a position where you have to include it, then it's understanding right off the start that how do you limit that? Because if I can use the utilities and I'm not paying for it, I'll leave the lights on, I'll add on extra heaters and so on. So the way we offset that is by, in the rental agreement we put in, if the tenant puts in a air conditioning unit, window unit or so on, there's an extra cost. If the tenant adds additional appliances, like a special freezer or so on, again, depending on the nature of the unit, then we can build in the additional fees. We can look at what, can we add like additional parking, limit the level of parking, and can we add extra parking? So we're looking for add-ons to increase the rent. The other part is that if I have to go and do major repairs or renovations to the property, like roof, upgrades, furnace, and so on, those are extraordinary expenses. There's provisions in the Act to how I can apply to the board for extraordinary increase. And again, it's a process, it's not complicated, but it's following, understanding the rules. So it's little blocks, adding them together, and that has a cumulative effect. A lot of times people say, oh, what's 2%? I can't be bothered. But 2% on top of 2%, can you see how that adds up? The other part is the tenant's actually moving out. When the tenant move out, you have the ability to set the new market rent. What if they don't want to move out? Well, sometimes we can be creative. We can always, if the tenants are very low, you can always buy the tenants out. It may cost you more upfront, but it gives you the ability to reset the rent. Different options. Using the excuse, I'm going to move into it myself and then to get the tenant out, is not a strategy I would recommend. Because if, let's say, you use that and then the tenant looks back and finds that it's actually rented, they have the ability to go back to the board and you will be penalized, and the fees are actually considerable. So understand the rules, play by the rules, and you'll be able to increase the rents. Now, if you're buying brand new properties that's been after November of 2018, then basically those are not subject to rent increase guidelines. So that means, unlike other properties that were built prior to that date that are subject to an annual guideline increase limit, in these properties you're able to increase the rent to whatever the market will bear. So if you're charging $2,000, the tenant does not have to move out in order to be able to increase it. If they're staying in the unit and you find that the rents for the same type of units are $2,500, you're able to give a proper notice of rent increase to the amount, providing it's subject to market rent.